in a world full of negative people. Hey man, I'm just trying to be a positive guy, a positive farmer, a positive outfitter. This is the Shark Farmer Podcast with your host, Rob Sharkey. Whatever.
And welcome again to the Shark Farmer Podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Rob Sharkey, and today we're going to go to Plainville, Kansas. We're going to talk to Matt McCune. How you doing, Matt?
Great. How are you, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good. It's pretty windy here, so it's almost like we're trying to accommodate you.
Yeah, you took our wind today. It's actually nice. It's 50 degrees and not windy for once.
Yeah, see how it is. What part of Kansas is Plainville?
We're in the northwest, I guess you'd call it quarter. I'm north of Hayes, 20 miles. We joke that we're out here in the northwest desert.
I've actually been out there. There's not a whole lot there.
Yeah, you know, it's, of course, everybody jokes about how flat it is. It's really not that right here, but we're a pretty good mix of dry land, farming, and pasture. You got to go another hour west of me to get into the irrigation.
Yeah, where we were, there was a lot of pasture. It just seems like they would have these giant blocks of ground, and there would be like a handful of cattle out there. I'm assuming just because of how dry it is, and you had to have so many per acre, and it just seemed like there weren't very many out there per acre.
Yeah, our stocking rates are pretty low around here. You know, our average precipitation is around 19 to 20 inches. Last 2 years, it's been more than that, but you got to prepare. June and July and first part of August, generally we don't get much, if any, rain. We're still more farm ground probably than cattle right here where I'm at, but you go south of me and there's a lot more cattle than farm ground.
It's good to be prepared, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, we on our farm specifically try to prepare for the dry years, try not to go for home runs because you got to buckle down and try to survive the drought. And we're still summer fallow farmers too, so that's something that we do a little different.
I bet marketing is a big part of you preparing.
Marketing is very important.
Are you good at that? Like grain marketing?
Terrible.
You're terrible at grain marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you do wrong?
I just never have the confidence to sell ahead of time. You know, our insurance guarantees aren't that great, you know, with our low rain, and it's just understanding how to sell up to your insurance guarantees is something that I don't have a very good grasp of.
It is hard, and anybody that says it's easy to sell ahead is pulling your leg. It's hard to know where you're at. It's hard to know where your break-evens are, but I've been using Grain PhD. Now, that's kind of a playoff of Ag PhD with the Hefty brothers, but this is Grain PhD. It's separate, and it's got free software where you sign up for it. It's all free, and then you can put in there your information, and it's really easy to use. It's really simple. You can get your price per acre or your price per bushel, whatever you need to know. Because honestly, I've done the marketing stuff. I've done puts and calls, and I've, sold and resold and all that stuff. It can get difficult, and there's times where I'm scratching my head going, boy, I wonder if I just made a huge mistake, and I should have just went ahead and stuck with my future sell instead of doing it. Well, this helps with all that. There's been times where I've needed money, and I needed to sell on the cash market, and something happened. You know, those black swan events that are never supposed to happen? Hello, drone strike last week. I mean, this stuff happens, and then all of a sudden, your check that you were going to get is so much less just because you didn't have the foresight to sell ahead. That ever happened to you?
Yeah, quite frequently.
Yeah, those damn black swans. There was like, a once-in-a-lifetime event. Well, seems like we got a few every year.
Yeah, I can remember one in particular that caught us off guard. So,
yeah, which one? Can you say?
Mad cow disease.
Ah, yes. Yeah, that was
the week before we were selling calves.
I know. And that's the thing. I mean, you probably got along just fine selling cash market, and we all do it. And I still sell a certain percentage of my grain on cash market just because I like the flexibility and the freedom of it. But the Grain PhD, this free software, you go there, you put in your information, and it gives you a lot more confidence, and it gives you a lot more education. So either if you're selling grain, you're a seasoned marketer, or if you're a newbie, or if you don't even have agriculture and you just want to learn about the markets, this is the place to go. It's grainphd.com, GRAINPhD.com. Hey, Matt, it's free. Did I mention that? It's free.
Perfect.
Yes,
Perfect.
it is. All right, Matt McCune, tell us a little bit about you. We know you were a farm kid, but how did that all come about to where you are now?
So I grew up on a farm here in Plainville. My dad started farming in the late 90s, and he worked for a number of the guys that we actually farm for now, as his job, and we grew up on their farms running their machinery. So I've got a couple landlords that are like grandpas to me. I give my dad a hard time. I tell him that he hoodwinked me. He told me I had to go to college if I wanted to farm because I needed something to fall back on.
All right. Whoa. Let's get like where you're at. How old are you, first of all?
I'm 34.
Okay. So I'm going to guess your dad is part of that generation that to them, it was pounded in their heads and they pounded it into our heads that if you didn't have a degree, you just weren't going to be successful.
Yeah. And the kids that went to school with me, we kind of all grew up with that mentality. I mean, I think nowadays it'd be a little probably smarter to maybe look at doing a trade school.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was going to high school, it was everybody had to go to college, and I was a terrible student. Didn't like school, didn't pay attention. I enjoyed being on the farm, so those were things that weren't important to me. But I went to college, wanted to get away, have fun, go party,
Mm-hmm.
new life experience. Once I got into my career, into my ag field, it was a lot more fun. I really enjoyed school and meeting new kids that had similar experiences, different backgrounds, but grew up on the farm. It was quite interesting. It was at the beginning of the social media age, and people, that's how we connected. We went to college and, met all these kids at the bar and different college events and clubs.
That's interesting because Emily and I went to college before social media. The students were just like, some of them were getting the internet there our senior year. And you would download a picture and you would walk away from 20 minutes and then it would finally download. So how did that change? Like, because were you able to find other students there that had like the same interest, other ag students, and maybe other than just seeing them in your class and never talking to them?
So Facebook started my freshman year of college. For me, it basically started as a way to find a party. But as you got out of college, staying connected to your college friends and I was involved in a couple different clubs, and being able to stay connected to those clubs was how I basically started with social media. And then as I worked in the city, I started connecting more to ag with Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. But yeah, I can imagine. That's what I would have thought that social media was used for in college, was to find the party.
Yeah, the cops found that out too, and it didn't last very long.
So. All right, what school did you say you went to?
I went to Kansas State University in Manhattan.
Okay, I've been there. I don't remember much about that night though.
Aggieville will do that.
That's what. The Aggieville. That's
Yep.
Go there. It'll be fun. Holy cow. Okay, so when you finally graduated, what was the next step then?
So I had an animal science degree. I interviewed with a number of feedlots and was going to go try to run a feed mill, and the pay was terrible. I mean, you had to start at an intro job, and as you learned, you escalated the ladder quickly. But I got a really nice offer from Cargill to go run a grain elevator.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go through their management training program. But I moved to Council Bluffs, Iowa, Omaha, and spent a couple years there in what they call as a service group, and traveled around the multiple elevators and learned a lot about how grain works, handling grain, mix and blend, load and shuttle trains, how to grade. It was a wonderful experience.
Before we go too far, I guess I'm a little surprised that the feedlot jobs didn't pay that much. I mean, I figured if you're in charge of a feedlot, you better know what you're doing.
I wouldn't have been in charge. I would have just been running the mill, which is the most important part of a feedlot, if you will,
mm-hmm.
and balancing rations and whatnot, which was definitely not my specialty. I mean, I was going to go into this with a degree, but they were going to have to teach me how to do that job. But the pay was not very good, and it was a lot of hours. And I'll be honest with you, as a college kid, single, I didn't really want to live in Ulysses, Kansas, too bad.
Well, that's understandable. You got to be around other Utes and that. Okay, so you're running an elevator now. They make you grease the top of the legs yourself, or did you delegate?
It was one thing. I started out in a union elevator, so I couldn't really work, which was, everybody paints unions in a bad light. I loved it. I got to meet some cool people. The elevators were properly staffed. There was guys that were working at that elevator for 35, 40 years. I mean, and I'm not even that old. Got to learn a lot of cool stuff from them, but they did allow me to do some hands-on stuff. I mean, we replaced leg belts. We did all of our own maintenance. And I feel like in order to be a manager of people, you have to know how to do the job. You can't just tell them how to do it.
Your grain elevator was union workers?
Yes.
Oh, I guess I never even thought of that before. I guess all the ones here local are locally owned. I mean, we don't have the big ones like Cargill. Yeah, I never thought about that you would actually have to be a union worker.
I didn't understand it when I got there. I mean, there was only about 10, 12 employees. And again, a lot of those guys have been there a long time. But it was a good experience for me because as I moved through my career, I did encounter a couple union elevators, and you have to handle those situations differently. I mean, those employees have a job, and you can't pull them off of that job and send them to another job, which, again, unions get painted in a bad light. I loved it. I knew exactly what those guys are going to be doing every day. I had the right amount of people for the job. It worked well.
Did you walk around in groups with billy clubs and threaten people that wanted to bust you up?
No, it was funny though. It was always they'd have their union meetings every year, and people would be like, I wonder if they're going to bust up the union. And for me, like I said, it worked great. I just as soon leave it alone. They were happy. We were happy. It worked.
Okay. So how long did you work there?
I worked for Cargill for about 3 to 4 years. I moved around quite a bit. I'm really mechanically inclined, and they kind of started to pick up on that. So I hoped that we were in a transitional period there where we were in those 2 wet harvests. We were drying grain around the clock all year, and ethanol plants were shutting down. So we were transitioning out of ethanol back loading shuttle trains.
Mm-hmm.
So I went around and helped them fix up some elevators and get them back online to load shuttle trains. And it's not something you could just shut down the elevator. I mean, these places take grain every day. So, we'd have to do our maintenance nights and weekends. And I'm talking big maintenance, replacing conveyors, placing gearboxes on legs, putting new leg buckets and belts in, and managing the construction crews. Our safety policies were really tough, which was great. You had to be there all the time watching and helping the construction crews do it right. So we didn't have any risk of any fires or explosions or anything. And I spent probably 2 of my, again, 3 to 4 years doing that. And I enjoyed it.
Yeah, they probably get like all the safety harnesses and all the hookup. You just don't have the backup, but you have the backup of the backup and all that type of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
100% tie off. Yeah, we had that policy in place. For the most part, guys did good with that. It was the hard hats and safety glasses. And I mean, I'm not a tall person, but when you look at your hard hat and it's got big scrapes down the side of it.
Do you ever have those traveling guys that do the painting? They came by one time and my mom's leg needed some paint pretty bad. And I always heard, like horror stories of these guys that they rip you off and the paint basically washes off in the first rain. But I let him do it. And he had this guy helping him, and he was probably like 5 foot tall. He went up the leg. He went up the grain leg. He straddled. He grabbed his arms and his legs around a downspout and slid down the damn thing and painted it as he went.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen this done. It makes me cringe.
Even
my
gosh.
I worked for Cargill, I was scared of heights.
I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, what's your insurance policy?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. It was insane. But now they got it painted, and I will say it lasted a long time. So it is what it is. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they were not union workers.
Yeah. Kind of a little fly-by-night deal.
It's something. All right. Yep. So how long did you say you worked for Cargill?
About 3 to 4 years.
Okay. What was the decision to move on from there?
I thought I still wanted to run the elevators. I probably didn't have the proper credentials. I was better in the construction side, and they wanted me to go east to rebuild an elevator that had blown up years before, and I didn't want to cross the Mississippi.
Blown up?
Well, I didn't want to be that far from the farm. I still spent a lot of time. My 2.5 weeks of vacation I'd come home and help with wheat harvest because when I was in Nebraska, we didn't have wheat harvest. So if I needed 2 weeks off at the end of June, it's the middle of the summer. So that was something I liked to do. And when I was living in Albion, Nebraska, or Carlton, which is just north of Belleville, Kansas, I could be home in 2.5 hours to help on the farm.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of weekends where if I wasn't working, I'd come home and help with cattle and whatnot.
What are you doing now?
I am a crop consultant sales agronomist for Nutrient Ag, and I am based out of my hometown.
You go and help on the farm then, or do you say they're both full-time jobs, or how do you kind of separate all that?
They're both full-time jobs. My work-life balance is probably pretty poor. I spend a lot of time, once I get off work, I'll go to the farm until midnight, spraying and working ground. And it's just something we've had to do to build this farm up from nothing.
Yeah. So with Nutrient, you said you're an agronomist, so are you doing any sales?
Yeah, my job is basically sales. I make agronomy recommendations for customers. They run their own sprayers and planters. Most of them, we have commercial rigs, and I do that too.
Yeah, I've got that guy at Nutrient. I know who you are. I give that guy a hard time.
Most people do.
Yeah, he's never right. And if he ever is, I never tell him that.
Right. Yep. Nah, I've got a really good base of customers that I spend a lot of time on the phone with.
You have to know so much in a job like that. You not only have to know agronomy, but you have to know my ground. You have to know the history of that ground. You got to know that ground's got a water hemp problem. You got to know that whatever chemical did not work on that water hemp problem 2 years ago. You got to know so much stuff. How do you keep up with it all?
Put a lot of stuff on my calendar. I know I have a number of producers that have trouble with a grass that we call clump grass, and I know a certain time of the year that we need to do a certain activity. I'll put it on my calendar and call them, but it's a problem of knowing a lot. And people tell you when you come into the industry, don't be scared to say, I don't know, let me find the answer. And I don't want to say I struggled with that, but it was always concerning when you talk to somebody who's been farming their whole life and you're this young kid that, you think you know everything, but you got to say, hey, I'm going to need to make a phone call. Can I get back to you? But I tell you what, it earned me a lot of respect with my farmers. They know I'm not going to lie to them. It may take me a day or two to get back to them, but I'll know somebody who knows the answer.
I've never minded that. And I've had salesmen do that to me a lot. What bothers me is when they never get back, or like it's a week or two later.
Follow-up's a big deal of this industry. When I had my job before this, we had salesmen that worked with me, and watching them interact, and that was one thing I picked up on early, is just follow-up is big. And knowing your customers, some guys like to be talked to more often than others. I've got a couple of them that they'll pretty much ask me, why are you calling and using my time?
Mm-hmm. You were on the radio show last week. It was the last day of the year, and I think you told me that I could write a check on January 20th and post-date it on the 31st of December. Is that correct?
I think when you asked me that, I said I plead the 5th.
It's not how I remember it. It got written, though. It might have been on a 2nd, but it'll be fine. Nutrient can absorb that.
That last day of the year is always interesting. I used to know that you can never take it off, and it wasn't as busy this year, but I had a lot of guys call me about 2 o'clock wanting to chase me down to pay the bill before the end of the year. So that happens.
When Emily and I ran our buying cooperative, that was literally the week. That was the week that we made about 20% of our income was just in between Christmas and New Year's. Yep.
The reason it's changing now is, and you're seeing this, I'm sure, is we finally got a pretty good system to where these guys can do a lot of this online, and they can just pop on at 10 o'clock the last day of the year and make a payment or throw some money into prepay, and we can divvy that back up, this next week.
My game plan with Nutrient has always been I wait till Dane calls and says, hey, this bill is overdue, and then I pay it. And then I say, hey, can we take the late charges off? And he goes, I hate you so much. That's our relationship.
Yep. And generally, I don't have that power. I have to ask somebody above me, and depending on the circumstance. But again, it goes back to knowing your customers. I may have some that I usually have to call a couple times a year and just say, hey, I'm trying not to bother you, but I don't want you to forget this.
He never has to ask because he always gets me like a week ahead before it's actually due. So that he's played this game a while.
I tried to do that with a couple of them. I know they don't want to pay the late charges, but I also know that they're not opening their mail. And, you
that's
just
a
give
lot
them a
of
friendly
it.
bob. Yep. Hey, guilty as charged, man. I farm. We're the same way.
Well, let's talk about your farm. Now, what are you growing?
So we're a diversified farm, both crop and cattle. We have a cow-calf operation, and then we also grow wheat, milo, corn, alfalfa, forage sorghum, oats, and for the cattle. So it's a pretty standard farm for this western Kansas area. But the dryland corn, we do not grow any soybeans. There are quite a few soybeans around us, but we're pretty progressive. Dad has been pretty progressive with the corn.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a number of years when it got real dry when we quit the corn, but we came back to it. And last year was huge. This year was a little more difficult, but we grew record crops 2 years ago that, it's one of those things that Dad and I were joking at the time, but it's pretty serious, is we probably will never grow crops like we did last year again. It may happen, but we don't usually get 40 inches of rain in a year either.
Mm-hmm. No, you can't grow corn like you do in the I states. I mean, you're talking lower population on this dry land stuff.
Yeah, I mean, our yield goal we're planting for is 100. 130, 140 is attainable. We had some 150, 160 last year, which again is pretty hard to do at 14 to 17,000 population.
Yeah, that's wicked low. I remember I went out to Jared McDaniel's farm, and there was fire ant holes everywhere. I've never seen that before. Do you guys get hit with that?
Not as bad. You can in the sandier soils. We're really good black dirt, and then you're like 6, 8, 10 inches, you're at limestone rock.
Oh,
So
yeah, you're not holding much water then.
No, and it prevents, your rooting, and our pHs are pretty crazy. You get east of here, and I'm sure in your area, low pH. We're the other way. We're really high. I've got some places that are 8, 8.5.
Mm-hmm. So are you doing much tillage then?
We are 100% tillage on our summer fallow acre, and I like to necessarily, I don't want to say pick fights on social media, but I catch a lot of hell for being a tillage farmer, and there's multiple reasons why we do it.
Such as?
Well, when we bought the farm, we had to buy everything. We had to buy all the cows, all of the equipment. It all came as a package deal in order to get it. And my dad was farming, but we were about a third the size we are now.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought a whole bunch. There was a number of tractors and a whole bunch of tillage equipment that came with it. And there's an opportunity cost to me letting that equipment sit in the fence row and not using it.
Mm-hmm.
After we bought the big farm and got going, we did buy a self-propelled sprayer, but chemical fallow is quite expensive. The other side of that is we could have gone to having no summer fallow, but again, my dad's he wants to be level-headed and plan for the drought year. So if we keep our rotation in order, we could survive a really good dry year or a couple with our summer fallow rotations. But if I'm going to be making payments on this equipment, I need to be using it. I can't be making payments on the equipment and making payments on the chemical in the place.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
I don't know anything about it. You're all defensive now.
It's kind of funny. I like to give guys a hard time when they say tillage is the devil. And, I've got a lot of really good no-till farmers that do excellent. And as an agronomist, I'll even come out and say, hey, we've got some compaction problems. We've got some ruts. We've got badgers. Badgers are terrible out here. We need to work this ground once. And the look on their face just blows me away. They're like, you're selling against what you sell. And I'm like, I'm here to be long-term with you. If I don't sell you a little chemical because you need to do some tillage, it'll work. I'm here to work with you for my career, not just tomorrow.
Do you think being a farmer as well as an agronomist salesman helps you gain respect with your customers?
Yeah, it really does. Again, Dad's a really good farmer. We raise a lot of really good crops. I've had the opportunity to turn our farm into a big test plot, and he gives me a hard time quite frequently, but I've always got some sort of trial or plot, and then I could go to my customers and say, hey, this is what I did on my farm and what I saw. And a lot of them come out and see it.
Mm-hmm.
We're very open. We put out plots or trials. You could come out and walk in the field and we'll tell you what we did. We're not very secretive about, how we operate, but it does bring some clout. I refuse to sell something to somebody if I don't believe in it.
You know, I just thought of something. How do you get the seed sign post down in the ground if you're hitting that limestone?
Yeah, it's quite funny. Generally out here, my joke is if I put out a seed sign, it'll quit raining. But, I put out seed signs this year and we were really wet at that time. A lot of them blew down. Then I go put them back up and it never rained again. Oh, there's places where we've got a pretty good profile of dirt, but there's a lot of places where you don't have much dirt. You do have some rock, and it makes things interesting. Pulling soil samples can be a joke.
Oh, I haven't even thought about that. How do you even do that?
A lot of times it's not necessarily solid limestone. You've got a lot of big rocks, and they're not like you guys rocks you get in your combine. I mean, they're 6, 8, 10 inches down, but, I pull a lot of 24-inch soil samples, and nothing better than pushing that probe in, and you get to 20 inches and you hit a rock. And you got to dump your probe out, move over, and do it again.
And hit a rock over there.
Yeah. Yep. It's quite entertaining when you go out and rip a field. Say you break a bolt, and you go out and you grab that shank, and it'll damn near burn you.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah. Depending how tight and how much rock's in the soil. Sand, actually, I've seen, with our ripper, we try to rip everything every 5 or 6 years. Depending on the soil type, if they're real tight, yeah, the ripper points get quite warm.
Huh. As a chisel plow, we cultivate. I've never went back and felt one that was even warmer than the ground temperature.
Sure.
Yeah,
it's a lot of this ground that we've acquired the first time or the first time it's been ripped. When we go out and rip it, we're in the middle of the Western Kansas oil field, and our county's got a lot of, since the 50s, a lot of oil production, and we seem to find a lot of pipe that has been not used for a number of years, and it breaks a lot of bolts.
Yeah, I bet it does. Why don't you just get oil wells on your ground and forget the corn?
Well, that would be great. We don't own very much ground. We farm around a lot of oil wells, but they're not ours.
Oh, yeah, I bet you do.
Farm around the oil wells is fine. I mean, it brings a lot of tax money into the county. We have pretty good rock roads, and those oil wells pay for them.
Let's talk about how insane you are. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a desire to go after the most destructive force in nature.
Yeah. So tornadoes are a phenomenon. Obviously, we experience quite often in western Kansas. But growing up on the farm, getting rain is like getting a gift. So storms always fascinated me. And coming along with storms, a lot of times we get severe weather. And it is something that a lot of western Kansas people do is storm spotting, where you are involved with a local storm spotting group, and you'll go out and look for storms. I'm not saying chase them. Like, our county has a grid, and they place storm spotters every so often, and they talk on the radio and relay back our emergency manager what they're seeing so that they can help the National Weather Service put out a warning, or they could turn on the sirens just to be forewarned. That's kind of where I started. And then it was like, okay, I really don't want to sit here and let it come to me. Why don't I go to it?
When you're saying storms, are you talking about just the storm front coming through, or are you talking about actual tornadoes?
Both. I don't like to chase hail, but I will, try to find out where it is and relay that to National Weather Service. I don't enjoy being in the hail at all. But, I mean, that is something that we do. Yeah, just even as a storm chaser, we try to, they know the severity of the storm based on factors like wind and hail. And then, obviously, the radar, they can spot the rotation, and then we give ground truth. Even when I'm out chasing, my number one priority is to talk to National Weather Service. Then it's my safety. Then it's get video.
Yeah, okay. I bet you not everybody goes in that order.
Yeah, there's some of them that get a lot more into it than I do. I've been a quarter of a mile from a tornado. I like to be more photogenic now. I want to stay back a little bit, get pictures. A mile away is fine.
2 miles is better.
It depends. Like I said, I want to be close enough to get some good pictures. Depending on road network, my comfort with where the storms are at. We actually chased tornadoes in Texas and Oklahoma. I went with the Pinch Honky. We went down there over Christmas last year, and then we went down again this May. And when I get outside of my western Kansas hub, I'm not probably as aggressive, just not trusting the road networks, not trusting the roads.
Mm-hmm. Is it from the movie Twister? Is that why you got into this?
Come yes
on.
and no. I mean,
Come on, man.
It was pretty influential. It was. That period brought on the Storm Chasers. I was a little young when it came out, but that spawned all of the big chasers, and then watching a lot of the other chasers that are out there, the TVN deal, the social media. I was kind of already doing it, but I didn't know, hey, you could go out and put a camera in your truck and people will ride along with you and watch. I accidentally one time got a video and it sold, and that just was hook, line, and sinker for me. Then
what do you mean
traveling.
accidentally got?
Well, I was chasing the storm and I got a video, and we recorded it, but a guy goes, hey, you should send that in. Maybe you can sell it. And that's when I started working with a broker. It did sell.
Who are you selling it to?
National media, all of the majors. The Weather Channel's a big buyer. You've got ABC, CBS, Fox, CNN. All these major news companies will buy video. Generally, they work through a broker of some sort. It's just a great place to collect the video.
So when you see the little clip of a video, now, is it just like for them to always have, or is it like, oh, this one storm in Kansas and here's a picture of the tornado?
It depends. They like the national story. Obviously, the news media likes destruction. So the more destructive the storm system, the more impactful, the more chance they're going to buy. I mean, I've sold a lot of video of just little random tornadoes out in the middle of nowhere, but I'll be honest with you, the only way that works is it has to be a slow news day. If it doesn't march through a town or it's not, near people, it's not news.
I mean, I don't want to ask you how much you get for it, but how much do you get for it?
Videos can range anywhere from $250 up to, and I've never done it, and I really don't know anybody who has, but I mean, there's $10,000 videos out there depending on the content.
So, I mean, it is something that would definitely get people's attention. The people really want to get these videos.
I try to catch videos on social media every once in a while. Everybody has a phone now, and every once in a while you'll see people post up impactful videos. And with the brokering company that I work with and a team of, we'll try to get those videos and help them sell them because, we're running a business. We have overhead costs. If we could help them sell their video, it will make us a little money. And then the more notoriety we get, the more valid and the more looks we get. I mean, these national media brokers, they want to see content constantly. And you see this in social media. The less regular you are, the less impactful you are.
Yeah, those damn analytics. All right, so I'm working on a show with RFD where I've got to get content. I got to get videos. And I think, well, that's fine. The internet's full of them. But the problem is people post a video and then I'm like, hey, is this your video? No, it's not mine. Okay, where'd you get it? Facebook somewhere. It's like herding cats trying to find the origin of these videos.
That's the most difficult part. Again, it's pretty easy for somebody. I don't want to say it's that they are trying to steal the video, but it's pretty easy for somebody to download it, repost it, because they want to get the looks. They don't want to refer the looks onto the person who originated the video. But, that's something I really struggle with when I'm getting these videos. Generally, the first question I ask is, did you shoot that video? And if they answer yes, then we move on down the line. But you can really run into a copyright hazard of, it's one thing to share to Facebook or Twitter. The legalities there are somewhat unclear, but if you're a business and you're trying to use it for your business, you run into copyright, you could be sued.
If you sell a video to, let's say, the Weather Channel, can you use that video anymore, or is it theirs?
Depends on how the sales contract is written. Generally, the way we do it with our brokering company is the person still owns the video. They have given the rights to, and in this case, it's SVL Media, the brokering company that I'm a part of. And then we have the rights to publish that video on their behalf. Once you give us those rights, if you do anything else with the video, we generally stop using it, stop selling it. We have to have the ability to control that video, or the person we sell it to may refuse to pay.
So this is a company that, this is like a side hustle for you.
It is. Again, I'm not an owner because I'm a part of the team, and it's just something that we need volunteers. The guys that own it started it from scratch, and they were my teammates. They put in the money to start up the company. They're the owners, but it takes a lot of hands on deck because we all have full-time jobs. We all have lives outside of storm chasing, and video comes in 24/7. I mean, if there's a storm event going on in California and maybe a snowstorm going on in Minnesota, I might have video coming multiple times of the day, different directions. we have about 5 of us that are just volunteers that edit and put these videos out, because it does take about an hour, depending,
I
to
bet.
get the video from the person, and then get it edited up, get it presented, get the explanation, get the pricing set, and get it all emailed out.
Did you ever video one of them flying cows?
I have not.
I bet that'd be worth something.
It would be worth something. I think I would struggle with that video. I'm a pretty emotional person. I guess you'd hear me struggling in the background, I guess. But yeah.
Well, I mean, the cow it'd be let down gently, and it'd go on eating probably at some other pasture.
Exactly. I've always wanted to see a tornado throw a piece of equipment, though, or go through a
Here we
windmill
go.
farm. I always thought
now we're getting
videos
to it. Now you're starting to be a little honest, aren't you?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. If you can catch a tornado and video it well, and that's my struggle. My adrenaline starts racing. You don't pay attention if your vehicle's sitting there shaking just a little bit. The wind, if you can get your camera set up right, get it, your focus set, and catch a tornado going through a windmill farm correctly, I think that video would be worth quite a bit of money.
It's just like hunting, really. I mean, you're probably getting skunked a lot more times than you ever get one.
I probably drove 15,000 miles this summer and saw 2 tornadoes.
Oh, that is a fair amount of driving for 2 tornadoes. Were they good ones,
and
though?
They were not great.
Oh, they weren't.
No. The one honky and I saw in Oklahoma was good, but we were far enough away, and it was just getting dark. I'll be honest, at that point, I was defeated. We had stopped for supper, and it came to us. Everybody has that one hunt, in their life that you probably will never top. My wife and I chased the tornado that went by the north side of Abilene it was 2 years ago. I think it was 2016. And that tornado was on the ground for 90 minutes. And we were with it from the beginning to the end. I saw the entire life cycle.
Oh, that's cool. What was Helen Hunt's name in that movie?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Do you call her Helen when you guys are chasing tornadoes?
No, and she doesn't chase with me. We were actually on our way to eat supper with the Weather Channel in Hayes. This tornado watch came out. Guy calls me, my buddy, and he says, let's go look at this. I don't know if it's going to do anything. The atmosphere wasn't correct, we didn't think. We all try to overthink this, and even though we're not meteorologists and everything. We end up in Salina, and this thing's going tornado warned, and we pull in. Again, I used to live in Abilene, so I've got a lot of friends there. A lot of old customers. I still own a house there, and I knew the area very well. So we pull into my old customer's driveway. I wash my windows. Tornado goes on the ground. She didn't want to chase. She had no interest in this at all.
No, because she's sane.
Yeah, there's that. Tornado goes down, and it's small to begin with, but it gets big in a hurry and pretty destructive. And it's going right through my old trade territory that I'd worked for before and a lot of friends. And I start falling apart. I'm calling people that I still have their numbers, and I'm like, somebody's going to die. I'm starting to worry because this thing is big. It's a half, 3/4 mile wide. And at one point, she literally punched me in the shoulder and said, pull your head out of your ass. We have a job to do.
That's your wife that said that.
Yep.
That's
and we
a good
gathered
woman.
our thoughts. Yep. She helped me through that deal really well. I mean, there was a lot of times where I like to have a chase partner because you're trying to pay attention to your roads and positioning yourself. There's a space in the tornado or of the structure where you are the safest and have the best view. And, everybody likes to be in that area, and trying to stay in it while you're doing video, while you're communicating with National Weather Service. It just, it's a lot of overwhelming, but she helped me through that storm. And luckily it stayed away from towns. It missed 3 towns by 3 or 4 miles. It was a beautiful tornado. I mean, there were some houses that got hit, but nobody got hurt. It was an interesting storm, but it's probably one in a lifetime. I don't know that I'll ever see anything like that again.
We do tend to forget that those things kill people.
Yep. That's, again, my main worry. I'm a first responder at home. If I pull up to a house, that's what my instincts tell me to do, is to respond first, worry about the storm later. But in that situation, I never saw a house get hit. There were some. I wasn't in the right place to see it or go back and try to do rescue or anything, but it pretty well stayed out in the open. Again, I would rather see it that way. National media would rather see destruction.
I've seen one. I've been through one, and I tell you, they're not cool to be in. They are frightening. I remember the windows in my house, like sucking in and out. I couldn't believe they weren't breaking. And everybody says it sounds like a train. Well, mine sounded like one of those big Chinook helicopters, those big double prop helicopters that go over every once in a while. It was so loud like that just that big thumping that repeatedly. It's not something that I want to do again.
Yeah, I've been close enough to some of them that even the little ones, they're dangerous. I drive a F-150. You could call it a high clearance vehicle. It doesn't take a lot of wind, and you're in a predicament.
Yeah. Is it white since you're a salesman?
That's pretty funny because it's true.
Well, stereotypes are for a reason, my man.
You're correct. Yep.
So what's the plan with that? You're just going to keep doing it? Going to keep chasing tornadoes and hope you get the holy grail of videos?
Yeah, so obviously living in Western Kansas, I get a lot of opportunities. Generally speaking, I run the sprayer on the farm. I do a little spraying at work, and I help farmers. In that time of the year, we're doing a lot of spraying. But generally speaking, in order to have a tornadic event, you need a low-level jet. So generally the wind's blowing 15, 20 miles an hour during the day. And that allows me, I get off work 3, 4 o'clock. I can try to bust out, go west, pick a storm, get on it, and let it chase me home. That's my theoretical. I've ended up in Kansas City on a Wednesday night and had to drive home and get 2 hours of sleep and go to work the next day. But It's just, like I said, that first time you sold that first video, hook, line, and sinker, I was just full in. It's been fun. You spend a lot of time just driving. There's a lot of bus.
Yeah, well, we all know that from the movie. But I imagine you get involved with other people that are in this. I could see where that would be a lot of fun.
The social media deal is kind of fun. I mean, I've got a lot of storm chaser friends. We'll drive somewhere, and if at all possible, we'll group up. A lot of guys like to ride with me because I have the truck, and I will go. I don't want to say off-road, but I'm comfortable on the county roads more than a car. I like having a person jump in and run the computer and run the camera, and I can focus on driving. It does make it a lot safer.
Again, I could see where a lot of people got into it because of the movie, because it did look like it was cool. And they are unbelievably powerful, and to actually, kind of witness something like that. I see the draw of this. You're still insane and nuts for doing it, but I could actually see the draw for doing this.
Nature's beautiful. Even a destructive cell thunderstorm is still really cool to watch. About twice a year, I get myself into a circumstance where I'm pretty freaked out. I get in the wrong positioning. I was in behind a storm at Leota, Kansas last year that I was lucky. There was a tornado probably 200 yards behind me coming right at me, and it was hailing and downpouring so hard I could barely see the road, and I had to run 50, 55 miles an hour to stay out in front of it, and that was spooky. I try not to get myself in those positions, but every once in a while it happens, and it's not for the faint of heart. It is crazy. It probably is somewhat stupid, but it's just been an expensive hobby, but I've had a lot of fun doing it.
It's been a long time ago that I interviewed Karen Braun. She was in Chicago. She was nuts too. She went after these things out there when she was in Kansas. So yes, at least there was somebody that survived. So you still got hope that you'll live through this.
Yeah. Yeah. My full intention is to never drive into one. It's the joke is always, oh, do you have one of those armored vehicles so you can drive into one? Now I'm running from it. Yeah, I'm staying away.
Yeah, Leslie and I interviewed a guy that did that, had the armored vehicles. He had his own TV show. That Greg Johnson guy, he's actually doing like TV where he's driving into the tornado because he's built himself a tank. Yeah,
they go by the Tornado Hunters, and I believe they're out of Canada, if I remember right. But they're very good.
He was Saskatchewan.
I've seen him out. And again, his priority is photography and video. I have a lot nicer equipment, obviously, but, to be able to try to catch something pretty, and a lot of that stuff will sell if you do it right.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. Okay, good for you. I'm glad you're doing that. So what is the future of the farm there? What are you hoping happens with the farm?
As again, we've just bought this other farm 6 or 7 years ago, and just, trying to survive, make our payments on our equipment. I do see us transitioning more into the no-till, but there's still a place for tillage. Out here in Western Kansas, we don't get a lot of freeze and thaw. One, we generally don't have enough moisture in the soil to get a freeze and thaw, so that's why we have implemented ripping. And a lot of our neighbors have seen it working for us, and they're even doing it. That's why I like to give people a hard time on the internet. As an industry, if we promote one farming practice and then the government mandates it, we will go under. No one farming practice is perfect.
You saying that's why you're being a dick on Twitter? I'm not buying it. I think you enjoy it.
I do enjoy I wouldn't say picking the fight, but the constructive conversation.
Yeah. Well, there are easier ways to do it. Raise corn. You just moved to Illinois.
Exactly. I could probably farm a few less acres too.
Get ready for taxes, though, my man. There's a give and take to everything.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Your farm value, you could probably buy about 5 acres out here for what you buy out there.
Oh, it's stupid. Yeah, there was one that just sold for 12. The map's not there, but it is what it is. All right, so you've done a good job. You've become successful. You're pulling down both these jobs. What do you equate your success to?
That instilled in us the ability to work hard and, put our nose down to the grindstone, put in the hours at the farm. But, my wife is very understanding of my hours. In the summer times, I'm not home a lot. And another thing that I do have to, and I constantly remind them, but the guys I work with understand that, with my farm and the job working together, that was a big condition of me taking the job that I have. So there's times where, I'll be at work for some odd hours, might be at work in the night, and then I'm maybe at the farm a little bit during the day, but I try to make them both balance out. And I do appreciate those people working with me for that.
Very good. Yes. And you said that you were going to get me a one-on-one with the marketing person at Nutrien, right?
I may know a name.
All right. Well, Matt McCune from Plainville, Kansas. It's been interesting to get to know you. Very interesting guy. I like that you have gone after this with your farm and you're still got the full-time job. That's not easy to do. You're insane with the tornado stuff, but hey, none of us are perfect. But yes, it's been a lot of fun getting to know you.
Yeah, it's been fun watching your podcast over time. I've met a lot of cool people because I've listened to them on your podcast. Just social media and ag Twitter in general has just been a blast.
Yeah, we're out of cool people, and I guess that's why we're talking to you.
Perfect. Yeah, work your way down.
Matt, before we go, where can everybody find you on social media?
So the two avenues that I use the most are both Facebook and Twitter. My Facebook, I have a farm Facebook page, and that started so that I could share pictures with landlords, and it's kind of grown out from there. But you could search McCune Family Farms, LLC. And then on Twitter, my handle is KSU Fearless.
KSU Fearless. Yes, and I remember that from the radio now because that was your gaming handle.
Yeah, it was my gaming handle back when I had free time.
Uh-huh. What was the game of choice?
I used to play Counter-Strike Source.
I don't think I ever played that. The only really one I ever did online was Borderlands.
When I was in college, Halo was big. I was very terrible at it.
Yeah. That's the thing. You get on these things, and these people have been there for so long, and they know every little trick, and you die 20 times before you even. It's the campers. You ever deal with those spawn campers?
Yeah, I'm not a patient person, so I could never do it.
Bastards. All right, Matt. I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and everybody else. I hope you catch us next week.
And thank you for listening to the Shark Farmer Podcast. I am your host, Rob Sharkey. Please visit us at www.sharkyfarms.com. And just search for Shark Farmer to follow me on Twitter. Later.